The first blow wasn't the worst part. What shattered me was the silence that followed. My stepfather's fists rained down, fueled by whiskey and rage. But when I looked past him, my mother was there, standing frozen, eyes wide, lips pressed shut. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched. In that moment, her silence cut deeper than any bruise. I had carried soldiers bleeding out on battlefields, stitched skin in desert storms, dragged men heavier than me through fire. But nothing had ever prepared me for the war that walked through my own door. My name is Rachel Donovan, a U.S. Army combat medic. I thought I'd left the past behind when I put on this uniform. But that night, inside my own quarters, I learned that some wars don't stay buried, and the people you trust most can become the ones who break you the hardest. The barracks at Fort Carson were so still that night I could hear the ticking of the wall clock echoing through my room. I had just come back from another endless shift in the medical wing, the sharp scent of disinfectant still clinging to my uniform. My body ached for rest, and I thought the only companion I'd have was sleep. Then, bang! The door shook under a violent strike, once, twice, 3 times. The wood groaned with each hit until the lock rattled. My heart leapt into my throat as I shot upright, pulse pounding. The door burst open. In the harsh hallway light, Victor Hale stood there, my stepfather, his face flushed with alcohol, his eyes burning with fury. "You've betrayed this family, Rachel," he snarled. "Tonight, you'll learn what loyalty costs." Before I could move, his weight slammed into me, hurling me backward into the bookshelf. A sickening crack shot through my shoulder, pain slicing down my ribs. Breathless, I staggered, my gaze landing on the doorway. My mother, Elaine, stood there. Her hands covered part of her face, her eyes wide and wet with tears. She didn't rush forward, didn't cry out. She just stood frozen, silent. That silence pierced deeper than any fist. Victor's hand tangled in my hair, yanking me upright before his fist crashed against my cheek, the stench of whiskey choking me. "You'll never escape me. Family is forever." I tried to push him off, but his body was immovable, a wall of rage. Stars burst in my vision, the room tilting. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The olive green radio on my desk, the one I often carried back from late shifts. Crawling on my side, ribs screaming, I reached for it. His boot struck hard into my back, but my fingers managed to hit the switch. 3 quick presses. SOS. A faint crackle responded, thin as a thread, but enough. Even as the copper taste of blood filled my mouth, I clung to one truth. Tonight would not end in silence. Tonight, the truth had been set in motion. The pain in my body that night pulled me backward, dragging me into memories I thought I had locked away. I was 8 years old again, standing barefoot on the worn carpet of our small living room in Texas. My father knelt in front of me, holding a tiny American flag. His voice, steady and warm, guided me through the words of the national anthem. I stumbled, forgot a line, and he laughed softly, starting over with patience that wrapped around me like a shield. In his presence, I believed safety could last forever, but forever ended in a single moment. A work accident stole him from us, leaving my mother and me in a silence so heavy it pressed down on every corner of our home. I would lie awake at night, listening to her muffled sobs through the walls, hearing her whisper his name into the darkness. Bills stacked on the kitchen counter. Her shoulders sagged lower each day. I thought our lives would collapse under grief and debt. Then Victor Hale appeared, tall, confident, and sharply dressed. He stepped into our lives with a polished smile. He brought my mother lilies, her favorite flowers, and for me, a stuffed bear in fatigues. "To remember your father," he said, his voice smooth. My mother's face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since the funeral. For one fleeting moment, I almost believed he was hope, but hope soured quickly. His charm wore thin, replaced by demands disguised as care. He told my mother to quit her job. A man provides. A woman should rest. He questioned the friends she spent time with, until they stopped coming by. Bit by bit, he drew the curtains tighter around us, isolating her, isolating me. The breaking point came one evening. My mother walked into the dining room, wearing a simple dress she had bought on sale. Her cheeks flushed with timid pride. Victor's expression hardened. With a sudden roar, he hurled his plate against the wall, sauce dripping down like blood across the wallpaper. He snatched the navy medal that had belonged to my father and hurled it to the floor. His voice cracked like a whip. "There's only one man in this house now, and it's me!" I froze, staring at the tarnished medal on the carpet. My chest constricted. The last breath of childhood ripped away. That was the night I understood. Our home was no longer ours. It had become his territory, and we were just occupants in his dominion. By the time I reached high school, the house was a battlefield I no longer wished to fight in. I sought refuge in the junior ROTC program. Dawn runs left my lungs burning. Endless push-ups turned my arms to fire, but I welcomed every ache. Each drill drowned out Victor's voice. Every salute felt like reclaiming a fragment of control. In those moments, I was free. The day the scholarship letter arrived, I couldn't stop smiling. A future was opening, a way out. I clutched the envelope as if it were a lifeline. But that night, Victor ripped it from my hands, tore it to shreds in front of me and my mother. "Women don't belong in the military. You'll do as I say." The sound of paper tearing echoed like a verdict. My eyes blurred with tears, but beneath the sting rose a blaze of defiance. When they slept, I pieced together the torn form, copied every word, and sent it off again. Weeks later, another acceptance letter arrived. I held it in silence, my heart pounding with triumph. My mother glanced at me, her face pale with weariness. Instead of celebrating, she sighed. "He's strict, Rachel. You have to understand. He does these things because he cares." Her words sliced deeper than Victor's. That was the night I realized my mother wasn't just trapped. She was choosing her cage. I sat alone in my room. The stuffed bear in fatigue still perched on the shelf, its stitched eyes staring down. I whispered to the shadows, "I will get out. I will never let him win." That vow became my heartbeat. It carried me through every drill, every march, every exam. In silence, I promised myself a life beyond his reach, and though I didn't know it then, that promise would shape every battle I fought, both in uniform and at home. The sand burned beneath my boots, the air split by gunfire and panicked shouts. I dropped to my knees beside a young soldier, his uniform soaked red, his chest heaving like it might collapse at any second. "Hold on, I'm here," I told him, pressing my hands hard against the wound while mortars shook the earth in the distance. That was my life in Afghanistan, living between the scream of bullets and the fading heartbeat of men I was sworn to save. I stitched torn flesh in the middle of sandstorms, pumped life back into lungs beneath incoming fire, dragged bodies through heat and chaos. Every rescue was a race against time, and too often time won. In the middle of it all, two people became my anchor. Lieutenant Maya Torres, sharp as glass, her wit as quick as her hands. She teased me even in the worst of it. "You've got to learn to smile more, Donovan. War's short, but your face? Always so damn long." And Captain Daniel Reeves, quiet, steady, the kind of man who didn't need to shout to be heard. In firefights, he moved like a rock in a river, unshaken, always pulling the wounded to safety. Something about him reminded me of the father I lost. Strength without cruelty, calm without indifference, but even there, half a world away. Victor's shadow reached me. One night, after the camp had fallen silent, I checked my inbox. The glow of the screen turned my stomach to ice. An anonymous email stared back at me. "You'll never escape this family." Attached were photos, my face bruised, my arms scraped raw, the proof of nights I had tried so hard to bury. My breath stopped. I remembered the sting of Victor's hand the night I dared to defy him. No one else had those pictures. No one but him. In that moment, I realized he had found me. Oceans, deserts, a war zone, it didn't matter. The past I thought I had left behind was alive, reaching across continents to remind me I was never free. The camp was swallowed in darkness, the hum of generators the only sound. My satellite phone vibrated in my hand. I answered, and my mother's voice trembled through the static. "Rachel, you can't call me anymore. He knows. He smashed the phone at home. If you try again, he'll kill you." Tears burned my throat. "Mom, listen to me. Go to the support center for military families. I sent you the flyer. They'll keep you safe. I'll take care of everything." I heard the rush of wind against the receiver, her words breaking like glass. "You don't understand. He always finds us. Always. You just have to live. Rachel, if you live, that's enough for me." The line went dead. Silence swallowed me whole. I sat frozen in the dark tent, gripping the phone, and suddenly I was a child again, clutching a stuffed bear in a room that no longer felt like home. The next morning, another message appeared in my inbox. This time, it was unmistakably from him. "Next time, I won't stop with her. I'm coming for you." My hands trembled as I read it, fear and fury crashing together. The war I was fighting wasn't just out there in the desert against men with guns. It was rooted in my own bloodline, crossing borders, closing in. And in that moment, I knew there would be no running anymore. Sooner or later, I would have to face him. After months in the desert, I came back to the States thinking I had outrun the darkness. The cold Colorado air seeped through the barracks windows, the Rockies looming in silence beyond. I told myself the uniform on my back, the miles between me and my past, would be enough to keep Victor away. I was wrong. One night, just as I kicked off my boots after a long shift, the door exploded inward. Victor filled the frame, reeking of liquor, his eyes wild. And this time, he wasn't alone. My mother trailed behind him, her skin pale, her gaze empty, as though her soul had been left somewhere else. "Your daughter's humiliated me long enough," Victor snarled, gripping his fists. "Tonight, she pays." Before I could draw a breath, his fist sank into my stomach. My knees buckled, fire shot through my lungs, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Gasping, I looked to my mother, silently begging for her to step in. She clutched his sleeve instead, whispering, "Please, don't, but he's my husband." The words splintered something in me. Even as my body folded under the blows, the greater wound was her choice. Through the haze, I crawled toward my desk. My fingers found the radio, trembling as I pressed the signal 3 times, SOS. The door crashed open again, boots pounding, voices shouting. Military police swarmed in, pinning Victor to the floor, steel cuffs snapping shut around his wrists. Yet the image burned deepest into my mind wasn't his capture, but my mother lunging to his side, sobbing, "Don't take my husband, he didn't mean it." In that instant, clarity cut through the pain. I had never been her choice. I woke beneath fluorescent lights, the sterile sting of antiseptic thick in the air. My arm was strapped in plaster, my ribs wrapped so tightly each breath felt like fire. Beside me, Daniel gripped my hand, his voice breaking. "I swear to you, he'll never lay a hand on you again." At the foot of the bed, Maya stood rigid, arms crossed, eyes fierce. "Rachel, this ends now. You testify. He won't stop until one of you is dead." Her words hit like an order, and I nodded faintly, though inside my chest everything felt like shattered glass. The door opened. My mother entered slowly, her mascara streaked down her face, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd say the words I had craved all my life. "I'm sorry. I should have protected you." Instead, she whispered, "You've torn this family apart. If you had just kept quiet, everything would be fine." The room spun. My pulse roared in my ears. Her words sank deeper than Victor's fists ever could. In that moment, I saw her clearly. Not just a victim paralyzed by fear, but a woman who had chosen his side, even against her own daughter. And I understood something bitter and final. If I wanted to survive, I couldn't count on her. I would have to save myself. The courtroom in Denver felt colder than any tent I had ever slept in overseas. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the rows of wooden benches. I sat in uniform, my arm still strapped in a brace, every rib aching beneath my jacket. Across from me, Victor entered in a pressed gray suit, a gleaming veteran's pin fastened to his lapel. His chin lifted high, and for a moment, he carried himself as though his honor had never been stained. His attorney rose with practiced confidence. "Your Honor, this is nothing more than a misunderstanding. Captain Donovan is exaggerating, fabricating even, in order to humiliate her stepfather." Victor's eyes locked on mine, his lips curling into a smirk. "She's been unstable since she was a child. She's never known respect. Not for me. Not for family." Heat surged through my chest, but I forced myself to stay still, gripping the edge of my chair until my knuckles burned. I wasn't alone this time. One by one, the evidence stacked like bricks forming a wall. The SOS signal from my radio. The medical records detailing every bruise, every fracture. The testimony of a neighbor from Texas who said, "I heard Elaine crying through the walls for years." Then the silence grew heavy. Every eye turned to my mother, sitting in the witness chair, trembling. My heart sank. I feared she would do what she always had. Stay quiet. Protect him. The judge's voice cut through. "Mrs. Hale, tell us, what happened during those 15 years?" The room froze. My mother bowed her head, tears slipping onto the wood beneath her hands. Then, in a voice cracked and raw, she spoke. "It's all true. He beat me. He beat my daughter." I stayed silent because I thought if I bore it, she'd be spared. I thought silence would protect us, but I was wrong. Her words cracked the air like a hammer against glass. For years she had chosen him over me, but in that moment, the silence finally shattered. The mask Victor wore, of discipline, of dignity, of honor, splintered and fell away. His smirk dissolved, and for the first time, I saw panic in his eyes. The man who had ruled our lives with fists and fear had just been stripped bare, undone not by my voice alone, but by the truth he could no longer bury. The judge's gavel struck with a sharp finality. "The defendant, Victor Hale, is hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. All veterans' benefits and honors are revoked." The words reverberated through the chamber like the toll of a heavy bell. For a second, silence hung in the air. Then Victor erupted, his voice raw with fury. "You can't do this to me. I'm a soldier. I fought for this country. I am—" The rest was cut short by the clink of handcuffs tightening around his wrists. His protests crumbled under the weight of iron, swallowed by the scrape of boots escorting him out of the courtroom. I sat motionless, tears threatening but refusing to fall. What washed over me wasn't triumph. It was release, like chains I'd carried since childhood had finally snapped loose. For the first time, I could breathe without waiting for the next blow. But freedom wasn't only for me. It couldn't end there. With Maya at my side and Daniel lending his strength, we built something out of the wreckage. Safe Haven Shield, a network for military families trapped in silence. Maya handled outreach, fierce and unyielding. Daniel managed logistics, ensuring no call for help went unanswered. And me, I sat with survivors, listened to their fractured voices, and promised them what I once longed to hear. You are not alone. Even my mother took her first hesitant steps toward healing. She walked into a veterans counseling center, her voice shaky as she spoke of years she had endured. At first, she only listened. Then, slowly, she began to share, her words jagged, her hands trembling. Each confession was a stitch pulling her back together. It wasn't redemption overnight, but it was a beginning. For her, for me, for every soul still trapped in shadows, waiting for the moment they could step into the light. A year later, the sky above Denver stretched wide and blue, flags snapping in the crisp wind. I marched at the head of the Army Medical Corps during the city's parade, The steady rhythm of boots striking pavement echoing through my chest. Beneath the sharp lines of my uniform, scars ached faintly, reminders of nights that had nearly broken me. But every step I took was firm, unyielding. I carried myself not as a victim, but as someone who had survived and endured. Then I heard it, a voice rising above the crowd, shaky but strong, the notes of the national anthem. My head lifted instinctively. From the grandstand, I saw my mother standing tall, tears glistening in her eyes, her lips forming every word. Her voice trembled, but it did not falter. The sound carried me back to a living room in Texas, when I was 8 years old, my father kneeling with a flag in his hand, guiding me through the anthem I barely knew. His patience, his warmth, his steady love, they had been my foundation. And now, after all the silence and shadows, my mother's voice joined his in memory, binding the circle closed. I smiled, a quiet smile that belonged not to victory, but to freedom. I was no longer the girl clutching a stuffed bear in fear, waiting for someone else to decide her worth. I was a soldier, a medic, a survivor, and now, a protector for others still caught in the dark. Freedom had not been handed to me. It had been fought for, claimed, and spoken aloud. And as the anthem swelled and the flags rippled overhead, I knew this truth. Silence had lost its power. My voice, and the voices of those I stood for, would never be buried again.